Joe has Percy Granger's door. Joe, tell him.
What?
I do. It's a very funny story.
Hey everybody, this video is the next video in my series, What is Band Like in various countries around the world. Today, we're going to Australia. If you like this band content, you like the band content? If you like this band content, please like and subscribe. I had two incredible band directors reach out to me to talk about Australia.
Hi everybody, I'm John Lynch. I'm the director of bands at the Sydney Conservatorium of Music. I'm a dual citizen of the US and Australia, very proudly so, but I spent most of my life and career in the United States. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, and I've been in Australia 6 years, and it's a very exciting position I have. I've been able to start the first comprehensive university wind band program in Australia. And so I've been learning a lot over the last 6 years, and I'm excited to share it. And I'm also excited to share the stage here with my dear friend, Joanne Heaton, who's with us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanne Heaton. I've been a band director for well over 30 years, and most of my time I've been spending working in Australia. I'm currently head of bands at Haileybury College here in Australia. We've got 7 campuses, so it's a very exciting and new position there as well, which is great. I did have a fortunate time in my career where I went to Utah to do my Masters of Music in Conducting. And I ended up staying there for 5 years and teaching middle school band. Most recently, I've had the extreme joy of working with John Lynch at the Sydney Conservatorium. I undertook a Doctor of Musical Arts with John. I'm the first one in Australia to have completed the degree here in majoring in wind band conducting. Your question is really interesting because very much no, there is no average. There is as many approaches to doing band here in Australia as there are areas. So every state really has a slightly different approach. I guess the most important thing to mention is band is not a subject here. It's not a subject at all. So it is completely in the extracurricular realm. And that's pretty much nationwide. And band is almost like the chess club after school. So if students enroll in music lessons, so if I wanted to learn the saxophone, I would enroll in lessons. I would have a pull-out lesson situation where I'd come out of maths, say, and have my 30-minute saxophone lesson with my saxophone teacher. And I might get a report for that, so that might be a graded thing. But it's still a voluntary, extracurricular. And then once a week after school or before school, I would have band, and that would be a non-graded thing. So that's the hugely big difference between what's happening here in Australia and what's happening in America. Yeah, but every state is different. So for instance, in Queensland, they do have a centralised government school music teacher pool. And so band is quite strong in the schools in Queensland. Perth also, Western Australia, they have something similar. They're the 2 states that have it quite well structured. Now, this is a gross generalisation, but yes, because it's all extracurricular, it can be absolutely anything. Also, we would therefore have a teacher for every instrument. So I worked for 9 years in a government high school, Camberwell High School. We had 15 teachers. The oboe teacher would be there a day a week, and the horn teacher would be there a day a week, and so on.
Yeah, and I would add to that to American band directors, it probably seems quite shocking, and people can't imagine, like, how could you ever create a band from this? But if you caught some of the things she said, there's some inherent amazing strengths in the structure, in that every kid in band literally studies one-on-one on an instrument. So while the emphasis on the large ensemble as a curricular activity is not as high, the emphasis on the individual learning is probably higher. So I would say in general, and if I can grossly generalize, the overall Australian musical society or cultural society is stronger in some ways than the US, that because general music is stressed at the high school level, and because so many kids in band are studying the instruments to a high level one-on-one, that it's a highly musically literate society, I would say, as a whole. So there's some wonderful strengths in the Australian system, as well as some obvious challenges. I can't imagine what band directors back home would think about one rehearsal a week for 40 minutes.
I used to take 7th grade classroom music, which was a compulsory class. They would meet twice a week. I did 8th grade, again, classroom music. And what's interesting is in the classroom, often we'll do more contemporary stuff because you've got all the kids there. You've got the kids who learn instruments and the kids who don't learn instruments. So you've got to do a broad cross, you know, so we might do some theory, but we'll do it in a performance type of way. We've got often classroom sets of keyboards, classroom sets of guitars. We might do little rock bands, and we'll do little rhythm, do some composition, things like that. So that's the general classroom thing. And then that feeds into what we would call our senior music, which is kind of like what you do with your AP stuff. So year 11 and 12, they have a very high level of theory and oral that they would work towards. So for instance, in the 12th grade exam, I would play a tune and the kids have to write it down by ear, you know, writing down rhythms by ear and chord structures and things like that. So that's the 11th and 12th grade. Every state is a completely different approach.
I was taken aback that I was so impressed with the individual playing level of all of the students from freshman year on, but that their ensemble experience was less than we have in the US. So the things we had to work on a lot were more listening and ensemble skills and how to play as a team. And so it's been an interesting challenge seeing it from a totally different perspective. It's also amazing to me that in Australia, like, even given the constraints of the school band programs, at how popular and prolific band is. Like, there's not one town that doesn't have a community band or a high school band or, you know, an elementary band. Like, band is, there's more people involved with the band activity than any other ensemble in Australia. It's just amazing. It's sort of like a flower growing in a rock. It's like, you know, it's very hard to do, but band directors are ingenious and efficient and they make it happen. So we structure, at the university level, our band program is structured very much like a US band program would be. We get 6 hours of rehearsal a week. It's very high level, intense, and there's a big commitment to it. And so we're establishing that kind of high level program at the university level. And we're thinking and hoping that this kind of activity will filter down to all levels of experience. So exposing our university students to a broad array of repertoire that they hadn't experienced previously, like bringing just a lot of interesting pieces from around the world and creating this high-level band culture to go side by side with the really popular band culture that exists in the country.
With our early bands, with our beginner bands, it's exactly the same as in the States. So we use a lot of the American material. We really do. We do have one significant educational publisher. So we have Brolga Music here, who publishes educational type music, which is very similar to Barnhouse or any of the others. They have a stock of Australian composers that work in there. And so we have that happens a lot in our schools as well. We do try and support our own when we can. People will do the method books for, you know, if we get past page 10, we're lucky. And then they're straight into ensemble. And I guess the reason for that, we have band once a week. And so there's this urgency to get the kids to a real piece of music as soon as possible. But in doing that, we lose the sequence. Again, what I've said is a gross generalization. There is some pockets of people out there who are doing, you know, they'll do book 1 and then they'll do book 2, that kind of thing. But overall, the overall majority aren't spending enough time in the method book area.
Well, I kind of went in with blinders on and just basically treated them like I would a high-level American university group, in that I just throw everything at them. I mean, there's nothing they can't play, and they just devour it. In fact, they devour it much more quickly than my American students did. And I would say it's just because their one-on-one training is so strong. They have great oral skills, great technical facility skills, and great sound. So the reason that they can get to the music so quickly is that the kids have individual playing skills because they're taking lessons one-on-one from day one. So they're having a content expert making sure they have the right habits, rather than, you know, in the US, you have maybe one band director that has to know everything about every instrument and might know it at a certain level in depth, but can't know every instrument as well as a specialist would. Like in Australia, every kid comes to the table with that kind of intense knowledge. So you can get to the music faster. One of my big missions is, though, to encourage people to work on ensemble fundamentals. Like, I know that's huge in Texas and other places in the United States. and it's sporadic here, but I'm on a mission to tell people that, if you're going to spend some of your rehearsal time, the best time to spend at the beginning of rehearsal is on fundamentals, because that will carry into everything that they do and build their ensemble skills really quickly. Things like timbre matching and beatless unison, mouthpiece buzzing and sustained long tones and chorale playing. All of those things that we do religiously in the United States will help the bands here become even stronger. You'd be shocked at 40 minutes a week what the Australian band directors accomplish. They put together amazing concerts. It's really cool. Yeah, but at the conservatorium, like, I throw everything at them. There's nothing they can't tackle. There were friends that said, "Hey, are you going to start a marching band program in Australia?" And I'm like, "Hell no." No, I love marching band. I've been involved with it more years in my life than I haven't been, but it's kind of a nice change not to have that driving the train so much. Yeah, football is not a big thing here. American football isn't, and so the sports scene is so different. Australia has a huge, passionate sports culture, but different sports than we're used to. And just marching bands have never been a part of that. The traditional marching bands with field shows doesn't really exist. Now, people do march out of the military tradition. There are parades, and bands march in parades, and that's a beloved tradition in towns across the country.
In actual fact, the majority of the marching that would happen here in Australia is with the brass bands. So back into that, again, the British tradition of, the town brass band, and they would not do any formations. They would march, straight lines down the center of a street for a parade.
I hate to interrupt the video right in the middle like this, but I cannot understate to you just how many community bands and how many brass bands there are in Australia. When they say that every single city has one, they're not lying. I just did a Google search to find some B-roll footage of community bands and brass bands for the video. I found websites that were literally just directories for other brass bands and community bands in Australia. There's even a YouTube channel that is dedicated to following Australian brass bands. This guy goes to all of the brass band contests and gives commentary like it's a major sporting event. Sorry, thought that was worth noting.
So we do have an annual championship. We do have a national band championship that is, I would say, probably 80% brass band and 20% concert band. And one of the parts that the brass bands have to do is they do have to march down the street, but there's zero formation. It's straight, just straight lines down the street, and they get marked on how well they do that kind of marching, but it's nothing like the American tradition, though.
When my students see drum and bugle corps, they're just blown away. They can't believe people can do those things.
Yeah, no, they're not like the colliery bands or anything like that. No, so it's often the council might provide some funding for it. Plus the members, they pay a subscription each year to be part of it as well. And so that's where they get their funding. But I was involved in an enormous amount of community music as I was growing up. So back from the late 80s through the 90s, I played in a lot of community bands. Often the council would give, $4,000 a year, say. So what the community bands would do is, in order to fulfill their funding, they would play in all of the citizenship ceremonies that occur. And John has experienced that from the other side when he did his citizenship ceremony. John, there was a lovely little community band there for you, wasn't there, I believe?
Yeah, there was a band there playing. When I was sworn in as a citizen, I was so excited to see a concert band on the stage, like, before we were sworn in. Very cool. Well, I didn't want to just simply transplant an American system to Australia, because that would be, not cool. But I wanted to see what would be unique about Australian music and Australian band, and create an Australian band culture of its own. There is a culture here, but I'm talking about the wind ensemble, high-level art repertoire. That's the area that needed development in my mind. And so what I did is I decided to take a two-pronged approach, that I wanted to target top classical composers living and working in Australia, and definitely with a focus on diversity. And also, at the same time, target young, talented composers that were, young, teens, 20s, that had a bright future and had a lot to say creatively, and get both those groups of people excited about writing for wind band. And so, I wanted to help foster and create a school of Australian composition for wind band. And we've been really successful in doing it. There's been no resistance. People have been really excited about it. And when I start sharing this repertoire, some of the best that's out there from other countries, they're like, well, why don't we have that? And so now they're starting to do it. And it's really, really cool. Yes, I have a little list here, and I'd like to start with my dear colleague Matthew Hindson. He's probably the most well-known commercially successful classical composer living now. He's written a couple of works. One we commissioned was called Requiem for a City. He co-wrote it with a famous international DJ from the LGBTQI community, and it's a really killer piece. It's fantastic. Natalie Williams, a good friend of mine, a real rising star. She's spent time in the US and Australia. She's written a work called Pendulum, her first piece for band. Very talented woman, and she wants to write more, and she should be commissioned. I would say Ross Edwards is one of the most famous living Australian composers, has a real deep connection to nature, and you can hear a lot of Australian sounds in his pieces. I would say if I had to grossly generalize the Australian sound, it's characterized by a deep connection to the beautiful landscape here, and also the interesting cultural mix of people, both Indigenous and Pan-Asian and also Australian. Nigel Westlake, Elena Kats-Chernin, Graeme Koehne, and one of our probably elder statesmen who just recently passed away is Peter Sculthorpe. Now, he only wrote one original band piece called Burke and Will Suite. It's delightful. It's about a famous set of explorers that met a tragic end. It's a nice, beautiful suite. And then there's some rising stars like Katia, Beaugeais. Jodie Blackshaw is writing works at advanced level band as well. Taran Carter, Carl Vine, there's a transcription of his piece. These are just a couple of names, but gosh, it's just exploding.
Yeah, well, at the educational level particularly, we've got Ed Fairlie has written a couple of pieces. Brian Hogg has been writing for us for quite a while, and I think he is a craftsman. His educational level music is fabulous. You know, if you're going to do one of his pieces, you know that it's great craft. Ralph Hultgren as well. Andrew Batterham has done one or two pieces. David Stanhope, yeah.
Really talented.
Yeah, fabulous. I don't think he's writing as much for band now, but certainly he has quite a body of work for band.
You can't neglect Percy Grainger either, of course.
Obviously. Can't neglect the great one.
Here's a good story. Joe has Percy Grainger's door. Joe, tell him.
What?
I do. It's a very funny story. So Percy Grainger was born here in Melbourne. It's about half an hour drive from my house. And I was taking Tom Friscillo, actually, to show him where Percy was born. And here's the house all boarded up and chicken wire around it and all of this sort of stuff. They were doing a huge renovation. And here's the front door sitting in the mud next to a rubbish skip. So I have to have the door. So I rang the contractors the next day and sort of said, oh, I'm doing a period restoration and I can see you're discarding this door and I'm happy to pay for it, you know, but you are throwing it out and I would really appreciate the opportunity to purchase this door. And the person on the phone goes, you do know it's Percy Grainger's house. And I kind of went, oh yeah, okay. I have to have the door. I have to have the door. And I said, what's it going to take? I'll pay for the door. And the person on the phone, it was fantastic. They said, all right, if you take a 6-pack of beer down to the foreman, I'll get him to put it in the back of your car. So I went down there with my little 6-pack of Australian beer, and they put Percy Grainger's door in the back of my car.
And now it's in your living room.
It's in my living room, yeah. So it was in a terrible state. It took me 4 years to restore it.
A couple final thoughts here. I would say that if band directors from the US came and met Australian bands and kids, there's much more that unites us and makes us the same. Kids here love band directors love band, we love music, we love making music together. It's such an important, special thing that we get to do. And being an island nation, Australians are really interested in the world. Like, I found Australians to be very outward looking. Many Australians take a gap year after they finish high school or university to travel the world because we are isolated. And so it's really exciting. If you see an Aussie or meet an Aussie in the United States, say hi, befriend them, because we're an extremely friendly place. And please come visit Australia. It's a wonderful place to come and see. It's a very special, beautiful place, and the people are fantastic. So I'd love to see more bridges built between our band cultures and our people of both countries. It's pretty cool.
In the description below, I linked as many of the composers as I could find, and as many of the YouTube videos that I referenced and could find. A big thanks to John and Joanne for helping me out and for teaching me what band is like in Australia. As always, thanks for watching.